Welcome, one and all, to Rees Rambles, episode 24. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you're all doing well. How are you doing? I can't actually hear you, but I hope you're doing well. And I've got a lot of stuff that I want to cover this time around, including some of the latest happenings in the world of retro this week. So I think without further ado, let's get on with it. So first up, just a bit of a ramble preamble, and I wanted to touch on my very latest video on my main channel on Control-Alt-Rees, the one where I take a look inside some old computers that I picked up from the Northwest Computer Museum last year, and these computers have been hanging around in my garage for ages now. I mean, it was towards the end of last year. It was like September time, so been sitting on them for far too long, but they have been stored in a nice dry environment, so they haven't degraded any further. But I thought it was about time I had a look inside them and kind of made a bit of a plan as to what I wanted to do with them. Now, this all ties in with a conversation I was having with some fellow YouTubers, and someone pointed out a channel called Mike Tech. Now, Mike Tech's channel is really interesting. It's kind of like an Adrian's Digital Basement kind of channel. If you're familiar with that channel, he gets old PCs and he kind of takes a look inside them and tears them down and kind of talks about what all the different bits are. And he's very knowledgeable about the history of these things and just the way that it's edited. And it's quite minimal editing, no fancy stuff, no flashy effects or that kind of thing. And it's all kind of live, unscripted voiceover stuff. And his channel has grown from nothing to 10,000 subscribers in 6 months, which is absolutely amazing growth. And he's very, very consistent with his release schedule and with the kind of the style of the videos. And I find myself really getting into them. And I was watching them and thinking, I used to do stuff like this kind of in the early days of my channel, and I kind of drifted away from it because I had these grand ambitions of making big documentaries about history and stuff like that. And actually, sometimes it's just nice to kind of sit with someone and watch them tinkering with something and talking about something that they're passionate and that they're knowledgeable about. And I thought, actually, that's kind of inspired me to give that style of video another go and just see kind of how it would work. Obviously, in this day and age, I like to think that I'm a bit better at the unscripted stuff, thanks to the rambles and the second channel videos and the supporter videos, which of course are all completely unscripted. And I like to think that I've maybe developed a bit of the gift of the old gab. Perhaps not. Perhaps it's just a load of rambling nonsense. But I guess the proof is in the pudding, and the pudding in this case is the analytics of this actual video. So I released it a few days ago, and I was absolutely amazed in the first few hours just how this video took off. In its first 24 hours, it got over 4,000 views, and yeah, it's dropped off now, as is the way with these releases. Usually it's sort of 24, 48 hours or so, and then they kind of drop off into the background, and that's certainly the case with this one. But yeah, at the time of recording, the video's been out for less than 48 hours, and it's got over 5,000 views on it, which is really, really good by the standards of my channel. I mean, I always say that if a video gets 2,000 views in its first 48 hours, then I'm happy with that. Which I appreciate it if you have a kind of a smaller YouTube channel and you're listening to this. It sounds like a lot. And don't get me wrong, I'm not ungrateful for all of those views, but yeah, to be kind of more than double what I consider a good launch is great, and especially on a new format like this that I've that I haven't tried for a long time. So very, very cool to see. But yeah, the inspiration for that came from a channel called Mike Tech, and I will link to him in the usual places. But I just thought it was only fair to give him a bit of a shout out. And also, if you enjoyed that video of mine, you will very much enjoy his videos as well. So go and check those out. So this week I have been mostly playing Rise of the Triad. You remember that? Just on a bit of a tangent for a moment. You remember that in the 90s here in the UK on the TV we used to have like comedy sketch shows like Harry Enfield and the Fast Show and stuff like that. And do you remember there was this? I think it was the Fast Show. There was a guy who used to come out of his shed and he'd be like, "Oh, this week I have been mostly eating cake," or something, and then like he'd go back into his shed and. For some reason, we all found that hilarious because I guess it was the 90s and we didn't have anything better to do. Anyway, that was a weird random memory there. But yes, this week, Night Dive Studios finally released their much anticipated remaster of Apogee's 1995 first-person shooter, Rise of the Triad, which is absolutely fantastic. I remember playing it to death as a kid. I had a friend. I know it's hard to believe, but I did have a friend as a kid. And when we were very young, I started off with the Atari ST, and he had the I think he had an Amstrad CPC at one point, the one with the built-in disk drive. I distinctly remember those weird little 3-inch discs. But then his family kind of got into PCs really early on. I think his dad ran his own business at the time and needed a PC for accounts and things. And of course, we always used to play games on it and all that kind of stuff. One of the earliest games I remember playing, this is another tangent, but I'm sure it's related somehow. One of the earliest games I remember playing was a platformer called Dark Ages, which I've really been meaning to make a video on at some point. But yeah, anyway, his family got into PCs, and my dad also had a work PC that he used to bring home at weekends. And one of the earliest games I remember playing was Wolfenstein 3D. And we got our home PC in 1994, and then I think the year after that, 95, Rise of the Triad came out, and my friend got it, and obviously I remember playing it around his house on his PC, and then of course it ended up being installed on our PC as well, and we both loved it, and we both played it to death, and it was absolutely crazy. It's a really kind of gory, fast-paced, lots of silly humour. It's kind of hard to believe that it was only a year before Quake, considering, Rise of the Triad was built basically on a modified Wolfenstein 3D engine and still used, quite janky-looking sprites, and it was all kind of cobbled together, old technology and stuff. But the level design and the humour and the gore and all that kind of stuff kind of more than made up for it. Brilliant game, and it's one that I've been looking forward to for a very long time. So I downloaded it on release day and got it installed on my PC and made some time to play it. And I got I think I got like 5 achievements in the first 20 minutes of playing it. Not that I'm an achievement hunter specifically, but it was cool that they've kind of set up all these crazy achievements for various things related to the game, like the God mode where you can like fire a lightning bolt out of your hand, and there's an achievement for killing 5 people with that and all that kind of stuff. And I'm looking forward to getting. I've already found Shrooms mode on one of the levels, and of course there was Dog mode as well, which turned you into a dog, and I think there's one relating to that as well. So looking forward to that. I've started with the shareware episode, and I have to say I don't because my friend had the full version back in the day. I don't think I've ever played the shareware episode. So I've been playing through that, and I must admit I'm kind of struggling to get into it. Really, I think it's because obviously back in the day, like the way that shareware worked, like with Wolfenstein 3D and Doom, and I think Jazz Jack Rabbit, there were kind of some of the games that I remember playing early on the PC, was that you would get the first episode for free, and then you could sort of mail off, mail in and get the rest of the game and pay for it, send them a check, and yeah, you'd get the rest of the episodes of the game. But I think Rise of the Triad, I'm probably wrong here, I'm not quite sure where I've got this idea from, but I think the shareware episode was actually just kind of a cobbled together selection of levels that don't really sort of flow very well, and there's not really any kind of story. I'm probably wrong here, but that's certainly the impression that I've got from playing it. So I am going to persevere because I do want to play the whole thing through to the end. But I have to say, I think the actual sort of main sort of retail campaign is where it's at. So I'm just kind of getting through the shareware episode for completion's sake before I start on that. But hopefully it will pick up. Hopefully it won't be a case of rose tinted glasses and not meeting your heroes and all that kind of thing. I have to say that they've done an absolutely amazing job on the remaster. I play these things sat on my sofa with a game controller. I know, sacrilege, playing first person shooters with an Xbox 360 controller, but that's just the way it is nowadays. That's how I tend to do my gaming. And obviously this was originally a PC first-person shooter that was like arrow keys and all that kind of stuff. But the way they've made it work with the controller and the way they've kind of updated the graphics, they've kept them very very kind of authentic and very faithful to the original. But also, obviously everything's much higher resolution and much faster frame rate and that kind of stuff. And as always, as is to be expected with Night Dive, they've done a brilliant job of it. Great game. I can highly recommend it if you played it back in the day, and very much looking forward to getting stuck into that a bit more over the weekend. Now, I wanted to address this retro electro workshop thing, which, if you haven't heard about it, is a new TV show here in the UK on the Yesterday channel. And the Yesterday is, it's kind of like, if you're familiar with the History channel, which is an offshoot of Discovery, I think, it's kind of like a bit more of a sedate and boring and British version of that. And they show a lot of reruns and stuff, but they also have their own original stuff on there, which is quite interesting. I don't think many people are aware of that. I know there's a series about electrifying classic cars, which I keep meaning to watch, which I think is a Yesterday thing. But anyway, they've got this new show, Retro Electro Workshop, and they've released a couple of episodes early on UK TV Play, which is their the online on-demand service. I don't think it's accessible from outside of the UK without a VPN. I think it's like a BBC-funded thing, but I will link to it just in case. And yeah, the whole premise of this show is that they go around finding retro electrical and even mechanical and indeed electromechanical things that are spotted in one episode to fix up, and they either buy them and fix them up and try to sell them for a profit, or in some cases, or at least one of the ones I saw in the first episode, it's someone who has a collection and they've got something that's not working properly and they kind of take it away and fix it for them and show the repair process. And of course, if you watch stuff like The Repair Shop, or indeed YouTube channels like mine and various others where we get old stuff and we fix it, then this is of particular interest. And in the very first episode, perhaps of even more interest to me, they actually picked up an Atari 2600, which was quite cool to see. And this was a slightly later 1980s 4-switch model. And of course, they do the whole thing where they go to like a big junk shop and they rummage around through this stuff. And hey, how genuine is it? Was it planted there? Did they have some scouts kind of go out a few weeks beforehand and kind of, find objects of interest and tell them to hold on to them and kind of, put them in convenient places so they can find them when they're rummaging? I don't know. That's the magic of TV. We shouldn't read into it too much. There's always a bit of Hollywood magic that goes into these things. But anyway, they found this Atari 2600 in the box with a load of boxed games as well. I think like 4 or 5 boxed games, and it had a previous owner had done like a composite video mod on it, and they'd left the original RF modulator in the box. Obviously, the bit that translates that signal into a TV signal, which is how it would have originally worked back in the day. And they paid the guy £100 for it, which actually I don't think is all that unreasonable. I think it's probably about right. For a boxed, was it working? I can't remember if they tested it in the shop or not, but it wasn't working. But the 2600s are quite easy to fix, really. There's not really a lot that can go wrong with them. It's either the power supply or some kind of video issue generally, unless like the TIA chips died. But generally they're relatively easy to fix. And obviously with those boxed games as well, there was some, there's off the top of my head, there was Moon Patrol and Pac-Man, kind of the two that kind of stuck out. But there were a few others as well. So £100, and they take this boxed Atari 2600 to the main repair guy's workshop. And he plugs it all in, and of course there's no video output from it. And this has had, like I mentioned, it's had a composite video mod done to it in the past. And it looks really kind of DIY and really kind of homemade, and it's on like, I don't know, strip board or perf board or something, I think. And the other interesting thing about this 2600 is that the top and the bottom case don't actually match. And I know this is an incredibly nerdy thing to spot, but I'm going to point it out anyway. On the later ones, like the one that they bought on the show, they moved the joystick ports to the top case. The joystick ports are on the back on the 2600. And they're part of the top case on the later models. But on the earlier models, they were part of the bottom case. And it actually had a modern, we're talking about something that's 40 years old here, but, it had the newer top case, with the top joystick ports, and it also had the original bottom case with the bottom joystick ports. So whether it had been cobbled together by someone with a big collection of bits or something at some point, I don't know. I can't believe it would have left the factory like that. But it's also something they didn't mention in the show, which if it was me making a video about it, I kind of would have pointed that out because that's quite interesting. But anyway, we can't fault them for that. And the main repair guy, he hooks it up to a TV and he tests it, and of course there's no video output from it, so he reinstates the original RF modulator, which of course the previous owner very kindly included in the box, and yes, confirms that the thing is alive, but of course the picture from the RF modulator is absolutely horrific, as you would expect. And he goes on to modify the thing properly with a new video output mod, which he actually claims to design and build himself. It actually shows the process of him kind of sketching out this video amplifier circuit on paper and then kind of soldering it all up. There are a few off-the-shelf solutions for these, but hey, that was good. Quite cool to see, I guess, seeing someone showing some initiative. Of course, a very basic kind of amplifier circuit and one that's been done in various ways over the years. But and then, of course, he gets it working, hooks it up to the TV, and they take it back. The two guys that originally found it take it back to their shop and they sell it in the shop, and they make £100 profit on it, sell it for £200, which, again, fully working, boxed, cleaned up with those boxed games, Yeah, I guess it's not that unreasonable in this day and age, perhaps a little bit on the high side, but I did like the fact that, obviously, in a lot of these shows, like the salvage hunting ones where they go after like storage units and rummaging through people's houses looking for antiques and stuff, they get to the end of the show and they're like, we paid £100 for this, but it's been valued by an expert at £2,000, so we've made £1,900 profit. And it's like, well, that's not how profit works, You have to sell it. It didn't matter what it's been valued at. And I did enjoy the fact that they actually sold it at the end, and they did genuinely make £100 profit on it. They sold it to quite a young-looking guy as well. I'm not quite sure what interest he would have had in an original Atari 2600, but there you go. I guess interest in these things is kind of coming back. So all round, I quite liked it. I've seen some kind of negative reaction and some negative feedback to this show. One thing that I really should point out, because it's something that a lot of people have been kind of having got a laugh about, is he obviously, with this 2600, they tested it and demoed it using CRT TVs, as you would have done back in the day. And it's very, very obvious that the image on the screen isn't real. It's not the actual image as it as kind of generated live from the console. It's been overlaid. It's been composited later on in post production. There was actually one particular shot, and it's very sad of me to point this out, but there was one particular shot from the back where you can actually see that he's got the Moon Patrol cartridge in the 2600, and somehow he's playing Pac-Man on the TV with all the sound effects and everything else. And I guess because people would have been more familiar with Pac-Man than with Moon Patrol. But I'm not quite sure why they felt the need to kind of fake the image on the TV, particularly at the end as well, when they fire up Pac-Man and start playing it. I guess perhaps filming CRTs is a bit of a dark art that's kind of been lost and kind of not really a thing on modern equipment. When you see like arcade machines and stuff in modern media, like Stranger Things and stuff like that, they quite often get a bit of a bad rap because they've swapped the screens for like modern flat panels. But actually, perhaps it's just because filming CRT screens is a pain in the arse. And I say that from the point of view of someone who works with them and films them for YouTube. So maybe that's why. Maybe they couldn't get a decent looking picture for kind of the final TV thing, and they just overlaid it for that reason. I don't really know, but the way they did it didn't look very convincing. It did kind of ruin the immersion a bit. But yeah, other bits. I've only watched the first episode, so they have released a couple since I watched that. There was in the second one they do a Sinclair C5, and then in the third one, which I'm actually really looking forward to seeing, they've done an electromechanical jukebox, which is really cool. I've seen a couple of those on the repair shop which is another excellent TV program all about repairing old stuff. And I really love electromechanical jukeboxes and pinball tables and how all of that works. It's absolutely genius how they were kind of designed and put together. So looking forward to watching those. But I should mention the other thing that they covered in this first episode as well, just because it's also kind of relevant. There was a guy who had a collection of old radios and they kind of picked one up and fixed it for him. And they essentially recapped it. So they took out the big old, like 3-in-1 big can type thing capacitor and replaced it with 3 modern capacitors and just talked a little bit about, wrapping the legs around the contacts to make it mechanically secure. And then, before you solder it and using leaded solder and all that kind of stuff, which, again, from someone who's done this exact job on my Dansette record player, which was a video I made a while back now. It was quite nice to see. And then obviously the radio was all working at the end of it and quite nice. So this thing has had a bit of a negative reception in the retro world, but I think it's TV. It's got to have broad appeal, I quite liked it. It's not bad. There've certainly been far worse treatments of our hobby in the mainstream media. So I'm going to give it a pass. And again, I will link to that in the usual places if you want to go and check it out. But that's Retro Electro Workshop. So finally, hot off the press, something that has just been announced is the 8-bit Do mechanical keyboard. And it's a mechanical keyboard. Now, if you're familiar with their range of controllers, and I use their M30 Bluetooth controllers with my Mister and occasionally with PC and stuff as well, which are styled after the original Mega Drive pads, and they're really, really good. Really low latency, really well built, really nice feel to them, to the D-pad and the buttons and stuff. I can highly, highly recommend them. And I also bought I can't remember what the model number is, but I also bought their NES-styled arcade stick as well, which I use with my Mister for playing arcade games. And again, a really, really solid, well-built piece of kit and really nice feel to it. Proper, genuine arcade parts in there, buttons and joystick. And it's all moddable if you want to change the joystick or change the buttons or whatever. And they just make really, really sort of high-quality peripherals, and they're actually quite reasonably priced for what they are as well. So it was very interesting to see that they had tackled a mechanical keyboard. And again, it's quite reasonably priced for what it is. I mean, the UK pricing hasn't been announced yet, or at least I couldn't find it. But yeah, $99.99. It's a 10-keyless keyboard. I think the pro gamers call it. So it hasn't got the numeric keypad on the side. And this thing it's styled after the Nintendo, the NES or the Famicom. They actually do 2 different models. There's a NES-styled one and a Famicom-styled one with those 2 different colour schemes. I love the Famicom-style one with the the dark red and the gold accents and stuff. It's a really, really classy-looking thing. It's a shame they haven't done a black version, because with my Mister setup, I've generally gone for all black, just as a theme. I use the Mister Multi-System in the black V1 case, and it would have been nice to have a nice matching black mechanical keyboard, especially at that price. I think that would have been a day one purchase if that was the case, but I'll probably wait it out now and see if they do release one. But there's some really interesting touches to this that I really should point out. So it uses I don't even know how to say this. Keilh, Keilh is the brand. Keilh box white switches. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not really into mechanical keyboards in a big way. I do own one, a WASD keyboard. I think it's got blue switches in it, maybe with dampeners. Maybe it's a very long time since I ordered that, but still quite happy with that. But yeah, so it's not your Cherry MX super high price ones, which I guess is how they managed to keep the price down. And this thing is apparently solid aluminium. So again, like all of their other peripherals, really solidly built. And yeah, like I say, it's got some really cool touches to it. So it uses its own dongle, its own 2.4 gigahertz dongle, like their other stuff. Also supports Bluetooth, LE, and wired USB. Has its own built-in lithium-ion rechargeable battery, so you don't have to worry about changing batteries, which is always a pain in the arse with my my wireless keyboard, that my old Microsoft one that I very, very occasionally use. And it's got, in addition to the styling that's kind of based on these classic consoles, it's got these, it's got a power LED, which seems to be styled after the Commodore 64, which looks really cool, actually. And it comes with these giant super buttons. And that's what they describe them as, super buttons. And you get a set of 2 with it. And these are like big red buttons that are kind of external to the keyboard. There's 2 of them. God only knows what you'd use them for. I guess you map them to some kind of macros. That might be handy for like video editing or something, maybe. You know, I could map one to, you know, one to cut and one to select or something. I don't know, like ripple delete, so I can just like mash the button and delete a big chunk of the timeline in one go, or I don't know. People are going to find uses for these things, but just really weird that they're included, but quite cool. And I guess they're probably, you know, they're going to be really well put together as well. And yeah, it's just a really nicely made, nicely designed, solid looking thing. And I assume being from 8BitDo, it works, you know, perfectly as you would expect. And, you know, kind of looking forward to seeing some of those and seeing people get their hands on them. But really interesting thing. One thing I will say is the choice of styling is quite odd, because obviously they do a range of controllers which are kind of, you know, they're reproductions of existing controllers. They do like the PC Engine and the Turbo Graphics and, like I said, the Mega Drive and the SNES and the NES. And if you've got something like a Mister setup, they actually sell dongles for these, dedicated 2.4 gigahertz dongles, which is kind of how they got started. So if you've got a SNES, for example, you can buy their wireless pad and you can plug the dongle into the console and you can play on it wirelessly, you know, like a modern console, which is really cool. And it was only kind of a bit later on that they started to add like USB support and Bluetooth support and that kind of thing, so you could use them with other systems. And if you've got something like a Mister setup that can obviously run loads of different consoles and computers, then you can collect multiple controllers if you want and use, you know, have them all connected via Bluetooth and use the right controller for the right system, just to add a bit more to kind of that feel of authenticity and stuff, which is really cool. Not a path I've gone down, something I've very actively avoided, because I would just end up with absolutely loads of the things and, you know, a lot poorer as a result. But that kind of leads me to my kind of one negative, not negative, but the one thing I would question about the styling of these things, you know, why base them on consoles that didn't have a keyboard originally? And all right, yeah, the Famicom did have the Family Basic pack, which was, you know, like a white keyboard with dark red keys. But yeah, you know, people don't associate keyboards with the NES and the Famicom. You know, they're more likely to think of the Atari ST or the Amiga or the Commodore 64 or, you know, something like that. In fact, the pictures on their website have it next to an IBM PC, an actual real proper IBM PC. And it doesn't look quite right. You know, you kind of expect to see like a Model F or a Model M with one of these machines. And you'd think they would have made the styling a bit closer to that. But then saying that, there are a lot of keyboard manufacturers out there that are already doing that. So maybe that's why they've decided to take it down a slightly different route. But yeah, give us a more plain black option that matches the rest of my Mister setup, and I would be all over that. But ultimately, otherwise, I do think it's a great thing. You know, it looks really good, and really looking forward to seeing some people reviewing those. But at $99.99, quite reasonable for a mechanical keyboard, and it's a bit of fun. So very cool. And that's all I have for you this week. So thank you very much for listening once again. And if you're a regular, you will know that I like to give a shout out to a YouTube channel that has inspired me or otherwise caught my attention in the preceding week. And of course, in this case, that's going to be Mike Tech. So I'll link to him in the usual places. Don't know the guy at all, but Adrian assures me that he's a nice guy and he's met him and he knows him and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, he does teardowns of old PCs, has the most amazing set of biceps I've seen on YouTube. I don't know if it's carrying all those old PCs around that does it or what, but has also inspired me to get down the gym as well as make videos. But yeah, there he is. Go and check him out if you like, you know, live commentary on graphics cards and sound cards and stuff from the 90s. Then he will be right up your street. So I hope you enjoy your weekend, and I hope I have started it off in the right way with my positive ramblings on the world of retro. That's all I have for you in this episode. Have a wonderful weekend, and I shall see you next time. Although, actually, I won't see you, but yeah, well, you know what I mean. Bye.